Come along with me today and I'll show you how to accurately piece a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Hey guys, welcome back to Frances Quilts. Today I want to discuss the ever elusive 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. I had a new quilter contact me and say, what the heck is a scant 1/4 inch? What do I do with that? So I thought, let's just talk about what an accurate 1/4 of an inch is and how you can find it. My first statement may seem a little weird. I believe that as quilters, we all have our own 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. I don't necessarily think that my 1/4 of an inch seam allowance is going to be the same as your 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And the reason I say that is this. We cut differently. Some of us cut with the ruler lined up right on the edge of the fabric when we're measuring. Some of us take that measuring line and it may be a hair or two over or a hair or two behind that fabric. So if you're trying to be super accurate, you need to find out what your 1/4 of an inch seam allowance looks like. Now, in most cases, it doesn't matter. If we've got a 1/4 of an inch, it's going to be fine. It's just if you're doing something like these two blocks that were 10 inches finished and had over 60 seams in them. I knew that every one of those seams had to be absolutely perfect or that block was going to be completely misshapen. But for today, let's talk about a regular old 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. You're not worried if it's 1 or 2 threads off. That's not going to make a big difference in the quilt itself. How can we attain and sew accurately that 1/4 of an inch seam allowance? Well, there are rulers that you can buy that you put the needle down into the little hole that's marked as a 1/4 of an inch, and that shows you where that edge is going to be. Then there are feet. Most of our machines come with a 1/4 of an inch foot that has a ledge on it that lets you see exactly where that 1/4 of an inch is. And let me just show you as you stitch through one of these. So I have my 1/4 inch foot on there and I'm just butting that fabric up against it as I go. But wouldn't it be nice if I had more than that little 1/2 inch ledge right there to butt the fabric up against? And this is where I've come up with a solution. Now, it's not just my solution. A lot of people have done it, but I've added a little bit of a twist. This piece I know is a perfect 1/4 of an inch seam. So I have put it back into the machine and put my needle down right on the seam that I had just sewn. And now I have drawn a line with a permanent marker on my machine that goes from top to bottom that tells me exactly where that 1/4 of an inch is. Now I grab some painter's tape and I start putting ledges of painter's tape. I think I do 6 pieces here. Four, 5, and 6. I'm not worrying if those edges are lined up perfectly because now I'm going to take a straight edge ruler and a rotary cutter that I don't use for fabric, and I'm going to trim that down. So now I have a perfectly straight edge on that side of the painter's tape. Okay, let's go to the machine. Well, actually, let's come back and let's cut off those 2 ends so that they're nice and straight. We go to the machine here and you can see the line that I have drawn starting above my foot and going all the way out on the edge of my to the end of my machine bed. And I'm going to take the painter's tape ledge and I'm going to place it exactly in place there. Stick it down well. We know it will come off easily if we need to move it. And look what happens. When I get ready to sew, I have a whole area there, a big area there that I can butt that fabric up against. I'm not dealing with just that little 1/2 inch that I had on my 1/4 inch foot. So now I don't even really have to hold it that much. All I'm doing is just carefully keeping it aligned against that piece of tape. And look, a perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance. So wasn't that easy? And you know what, if you're doing long strips of fabric, having that ledge there that you can butt those strips up against, oh my gosh, it just makes things so much faster and so much more accurate. So what have we learned? There's lots of different 1/4 inch seam allowances. But when you find your 1/4 inch seam allowance, mark it well, and maybe even make yourself a little dam of tape there that fabric can just butt up against. I think it will make your piecing easier and a lot more fun. So that's it for Tip Tuesday, where we learned how to sew an accurate 1/4 inch seam allowance. Thanks so much for joining me, and as always, I look forward to seeing you next time on Frances Quilts. Remember, if you like what you've seen, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Please check out my website and daily blog at francesquilts.com, and I can be found on Facebook and Instagram at Frances Quilts. Thanks so much for joining me. Hope to see you again soon.